My name is Alicia Rice, and I'm the Training and Education Program Manager here at MaineHealth Center for Tobacco Independence. I'd like to welcome you to our ongoing webinar series, which is one part of our comprehensive tobacco treatment and prevention education program offered on behalf of the Maine Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Department of Health and Human Services. Today's session will be recorded and posted to our website following today's presentation. We are offering one continuing medical education credit and one CHES credit for participants who attend the full session live. To receive the continuing medical education credits, you must have a Cloud CME profile. Credits will be available in your profile within 1 week of the webinar. Instructions for creating a profile, if needed, will be included in the post-webinar email that will come following today's session. For those collecting CHES credit, your attendance will be submitted to NCHEC after the event. Please note that only participants who registered, joined via the Zoom link, and attended the entire session are eligible to receive CMEs and CEUs. And at the end of today's webinar, an evaluation will appear on your screen and will also be emailed within 24 hours. Your feedback is extremely valuable to us and to our presenters, and we appreciate you taking a few minutes to complete it. Okay, so before we begin, we just have a few housekeeping items. So all attendees are on mute to minimize background noise, and the raise hand feature is disabled. If you're interested in a more interactive learning opportunity, we do encourage you to participate in one of our standard core or foundational trainings that we offer. Please submit any questions at any time throughout using the Q&A box. We will address as many questions as the time allows, and any unanswered questions will be collected and addressed in a follow-up email. And a copy of today's presentation slides will be emailed to those who attend the live session today. And today's webinar is titled Using Motivational Interviewing and Goal Setting to Support Tobacco and Nicotine-Free Lifestyle, and is presented by Bonnie Elper and Edward Perka of MaineHealth. Bonnie is a tobacco treatment and prevention educator with the MaineHealth Center for Tobacco Independence, and she shares knowledge about the best practice, evidence-based methods for helping people successfully quit smoking, vaping, and using other nicotine products. She is a certified tobacco treatment specialist through the American Heart Association and is credentialed as a master certified health education specialist. In addition to tobacco treatment, Bonnie has expertise in health literacy, patient-centered communication, and teach back. In her free time, she enjoys exploring the coast of Maine with her dogs, traveling with her husband, scuba diving, pottery, and gardening. Next up, Edward is an addictions therapist with over 30 years in the field, primarily in New York State as a credentialed alcoholism and substance abuse counselor. Ed has worked in a variety of settings, including inpatient treatment, intensive outpatient treatment, and long-term residential treatment as a clinician, clinical manager, and clinical director. Edward has been working in the field of tobacco treatment since 2008, and prior to coming to CTI, Edward worked for the State University of New York, where he managed a project to develop and deliver training interventions in the treatment of tobacco use disorder to New York State addiction service providers. Ed currently holds the national certification in nicotine and tobacco treatment and has been providing education and training on tobacco treatment to healthcare providers, behavioral health providers, and educational institutions for the past 16 years. Excellent. Welcome both Edward and Bonnie. And next slide, please. Before we dive into today's topic, there are a few standard slides that for CTI that I'd like to review. The MaineHealth Center for Tobacco Independence has worked across the state of Maine since the year 2000 to address tobacco use and exposure through education, prevention, policy, treatment, and training initiatives. Our key program focuses include tobacco treatment services, training and technical assistance, and health system change strategies. We're also proud to be nationally accredited by the Council of Tobacco Treatment Training Programs. As we gather in this place, we want to acknowledge that we are occupying the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Wabanaki people, who for thousands of years have called this place home. We acknowledge their continued connection to this land, give thanks for allowing us to do this good work on their homeland, and remember their ancestors who were here before us. Please note that references to tobacco in this presentation refer to commercial tobacco use and not the sacred and traditional tobacco used by Indigenous communities. And lastly, all planners, faculty, and others in control of this educational activity have no relevant financial relationships with ineligible entities. With all of that said, I'd like to pass it over to Edward.
Okay, thanks, Alicia, and welcome to everybody. These are the objectives for today's webinar. So by the end of the webinar, hopefully, you'll be able to describe the core principles of motivational interviewing and explain how MI supports individual progress through the stages of change. Demonstrate increased confidence and competence in applying OARS skills, which are open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summarization. To explore individual motivations for healthy behavior change. And then apply goal-setting strategies to help individuals develop small, achievable goals that support movement towards a tobacco and nicotine-free lifestyle. So we're going to start with a pretty high-level look at motivational interviewing, or MI for short. So first of all, when is MI most effective? So motivational interviewing is most effective when a person feels stuck or hesitant or conflicted about changing a behavior. So the strategies that I just mentioned, the open questions and the affirmations and the reflections, those are specifically designed to help resolve this ambivalence. So most of you are probably familiar with the stages of change model, which the Prochaska and DiClemente model, which include pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. So keeping that model in mind, MI is most useful in the pre-contemplation and contemplation stages of change. And that's when ambivalence about changing is very, very strong. Now, MI is generally not as useful for individuals who are already highly motivated and ready to take action. And for those people, a cognitive behavioral approach works best. And MI is also very useful when working with individuals who have low levels of confidence. So we try to build up their confidence and their self-esteem and their efficacy. These people want to change, but they doubt their ability to succeed, or they feel overwhelmed by these mixed feelings. And then finally, MI helps people develop discrepancy. And what that means is it helps them to examine how their current behaviors are either helping them or hindering them from reaching their goals, right? And we do all this by having conversations with people. That's what MI is all about. In fact, if I could change the name from motivational interviewing, I'd change it to motivational conversations instead. But that's what it is. It's talking to people, it's connecting with people, it's having interpersonal interactions with people. So again, motivational interviewing, or MI for short, has been called a collaborative conversation, right? There's that word, for strengthening a client's own motivation and commitment to change. So the founders of motivational interviewing, William Miller and Stephen Rolnick, have a couple of quotations um, about what they think about motivational interviewing. So here's a quote from William Miller. And he says, quote, people are the undisputed experts on themselves. No one has been with them longer or knows them better than they do themselves. In MI, the helper is a companion who typically does less than half the talking, end quote. And here's one from Stephen Rolnick, the other founder, and he says, quote, what is motivational interviewing? The ability to trust the wisdom of someone to know what is best for them and to structure a supportive and purposeful activity, in the case of motivational interviewing, a conversation, so that they work it out for themselves. End quote. So it's about being with people. It's about being alongside people. It's being their guide. It's being their companion. It's being their collaborator. It's being non-judgmental. It's having a belief that they can change, right? And we're not telling people what to do or solve the problem for them. We're guiding them along that path to help them figure it out by themselves, what actually really works for them. So when we're working with people, I think one of the first things to figure out is what our role is, right? Or what our objective is. And you see on the slide here, I have unconditional positive regard. And this was a term coined by Carl Rogers, who was an American psychologist. And he said, this condition has to be present. So non-judgmental, empathetic, compassionate for any change to take place. So for the people that we work with, we want to strive to have unconditional positive regard. And that's really what MI helps us to do. Um, what our role is, all right? Many caregivers, their first inclination when helping clients with problems is to give them the solution, right? And in my early days of counseling, that's what I thought I was supposed to be doing, right? My thinking was that people's best thinking got them to me um, with an addiction, and it was up to me to, tell them how to straighten their life out and give them the solution to their problems. And it turns out I was totally wrong about that because that's the solution as we see it, right? We're not taking into account any of their desires or their values or their needs or their experiences. So we're leaving them out of this problem solving process. We're discounting any contribution that they may have to this. So we're closing the door, right, to any kind of solution oriented process a person may go through to achieve their goals. So we dictate the solution. We decide for the individual. And that's whether the shoe fits or not. So this is not a recipe for sustainable change. I mean, it might work in the short term, but as MI practitioners, we're not the problem solvers. We don't dictate solutions to people. We don't sort of metaphorically point our fingers at them and says, just do it this way. So you might be thinking, all right, if we don't do any of those things, then how are we supposed to help them? And I think that first and foremost, we have a strong belief that a person's capacity for problem solving and healthy change already resides within them. In fact, that's one of the definitions of ambivalence. People have very strong feelings on one side of an issue and very strong feelings on another side. One side is the problem and one side is the solution to the problem. So it's basically there. The solution to the problem is within that individual, and that we are just going to help them find it. So instead of dictating a solution to them, we tap into that person's knowledge and their skills and their strengths and their experiences and their resiliencies, and we guide them to discover the best path forward on their own. So we help the person to actualize their intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation is that motivation that comes from within us and not from sort of external force. For example, punishment is an external motivation. People will change their behavior if they're punished for their behavior, but that doesn't come from the inside. So we have to help them actualize that internal motivation or that intrinsic motivation, as we call it. And secondly, we see our role as a partnership or a collaboration with the individual. I call it the therapeutic relationship. I've always called it that. Um, but we're not going to push or pull them, right? We're going to be alongside them. We're going to be gently guiding them as they work through the process. And there's a saying in MI, and the saying is slow down and you will go faster. And it seems a little counterintuitive, but it's true. It's not the outcome that's important, it's the process. We need to focus on the process. The outcome will take care of itself. So the time that we get to spend with people, the interventions that we do with them, the conversations that we have with them, that's the important thing. We don't want to focus on the outcome, whether someone actually stops using tobacco or other nicotine products. Because if we judge our success by that, we're going to be disappointed time and time again. And you may never see that outcome happen with some of the people that you work with. So it's important to take the time that you have with that individual and make the most of it by being a partner with them, by being a collaborator with them, by having these conversations with them. And then finally, the most important thing is person to person contact, right? And we do that in the form of conversations, right? We utilize the strategies of motivational interviewing, and that includes open-ended questions and reflective listening and summarization and affirmations. I'm going to touch just briefly on those in a few minutes as well. And when we do that, when we use those strategies, when we have those kinds of conversations, this enables the individual to really weigh the pros and cons without being under pressure, right? They enable them to think clearly and to articulate, to talk about the reasons for change and what's really motivating them to change. How is it relevant for them? They help the person decide the best course of action according to what's right for them, not according to what we think might be right for them. So it would be so easy, wouldn't it? Just to give people the solution, to tell them what to do, to disregard any input or ideas or opinions that they may have, not to mention their values and their beliefs or their attitudes or their fears or their expectations. And again, that approach might work in the short term, but it's not sustainable. The solution has to come from within the person. Only they have the capacity for figuring it out. And we can be alongside as they do it, right? We're going to be their guide, their companion, their collaborator, and we're gently encouraging them to explore the options and then to find the way forward that best works for them. So that's basically in a nutshell, motivational interviewing. So these are the foundational building blocks of the MI approach. So again, we're going to do a kind of a quick high level look at each one of these. So here's the spirit, all right? I kind of look at the spirit as the operating system of motivational interviewing, if you want to think about it in computer terms, right? You might have a great machine in front of you, but if it doesn't have an operating system, but doesn't have a foundation, then nothing else is going to work. So the spirit of motivational interviewing is the way that we bring ourselves and our style and our approach to the interactions with the people that we serve. So partnership is collaboration and power sharing. I like thinking about it that way. Partnership is power sharing, right? It's acknowledging that you and your client both have experience that can contribute to the conversation, right? Together you bring value, you both bring value. So in essence, there are two experts in the room. I love that term. I love the way I love thinking about motivational interviewing as two experts in the room. And when you combine that expertise, your expertise and the individual that you're working with, it helps to move the process to a more positive outcome. And again, process, it helps to move the process to a more positive outcome. And then compassion is the action of empathy focused on the other person's well-being. So if we were in a classroom together right now, I would say, all of you who have no compassion, please raise your hands. And in 16 years of doing training of this type, no one has ever raised their hands. And I say that's a really good thing because you need compassion in order to uh, be able to help people in this field. It's a commitment to understand another person's experience without judging them, right? And that judgment part is so important. We have to do this without judgments. And then acceptance is recognizing the worth of the other person. This kind of goes back to what Carl Rogers was talking about with unconditional positive regard. So the worth of the other person, their autonomy, right? Their ability to choose their own path. And when a client experiences more control, and you've probably experienced this, it usually results in less pushback, right? So the stronger the partnership, the stronger the collaboration, the less resistance you're going to feel, the less discord is going to be involved in the relationship. And the person is going to be freed, in a sense, to consider options without being pushed or pulled or shamed or blamed or coerced in some way. And then finally, evocation, that's talking, my friends, right? Evocation is eliciting and drawing out a person's experience. In other words, having safe and non-judgmental conversations with them. So if we think about these as sort of the foundation, right, the building blocks, this is you bringing yourself to that therapeutic relationship with that individual. And that's what makes it work in effect. So while most of you probably have some familiarity with MI or a lot in various levels of skill development, I did want to spend a few minutes on the core skills of MI. And they may seem uncomplicated when you look at them, but they're really actually very powerful tools that you can use to help facilitate change in your clients and your patients and the people you serve and the people that you work with, no matter how you talk about them, right? So open questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summarization. And these are the OARS skills. Just remember OARS. These are the basic core skills that you use in the motivational interviewing approach. And remember, we're using them with people who are in those earlier stages of change, who have a lot of ambivalence, who are stuck, they're conflicted, right? These help them to undo that in a sense. It helps them to unlock sort of both sides of the ambivalence and to really look at it and to really examine it. And these are derived from that person-centered approach that I've been talking about, and they help clients really explore things carefully. So we want to embrace the spirit, first of all, right? So partnership and evocation and compassion. And then we want to use these core skills to create a safe place for them to really weigh the pros and cons of change, the good things, the bad things, the pros and cons, the risks, the benefits, however we want to talk about it. So the first strategy is an open question. And an open question to me is like an open door. It opens a door to conversations. You know that a closed-ended question, you can usually answer that with a yes or a no. An open-ended question encourages the conversation. It's designed to encourage a meaningful answer based on that person's own experience and their knowledge and their feelings. Open questions invite people to tell their stories, and people like to do that. When you ask them if you're curious about them, and I like thinking about open questions as curiosity questions as well, um, they will engage in that conversation with you and they'll tell their story in their own words. And we're not trying to lead them in any specific direction. So think of open questions as conversation starters. No, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that closed-ended questions should never be used. Obviously, they should be. If you're doing an evaluation or an assessment, you have to ask yes or no questions, clearly. But to encourage conversation with people in a different setting, then open questions really are the best kinds of questions to use. And then affirmations are statements and gestures that recognize strengths in people and acknowledge behaviors that lead in the direction of positive change, no matter how big or how small they are. And one of the things that people lack in the pre-contemplation, contemplation stage of change is confidence in themselves. They're not sure they can actually do it. And affirmations help to build confidence in a person's ability to change. And we need to be genuine with our affirmations and we need to be relevant with our affirmations. And they're very, very powerful. But a lot of time they're underused, right? So catch a client doing something right. Tell them about it. Let them know. An affirmation to me is not the same as a compliment. A compliment is, from my way of looking at it, sort of an external thing, where an affirmation is an internal thing. You're recognizing something about that person that you respect, that you want to let them know about. So think about the last time that somebody said something to you that just gave you a warm feeling inside. And maybe you said, "Oh, that was so nice of you to say," or "That made my day." That was an affirmation. All right. And for the rest of the day, you're going to walk around feeling a little bit better about yourself. And if you want to go even further than that, try it today, later on, this afternoon. Give somebody an affirmation and see what the result is. And then the next strategy is reflecting. And reflecting is, it seems simple again, right? You listen to the person, then repeat back to them the gist of what they said in your own words. And there's many different kinds of reflections that we don't have time to go into today. There's simple reflections and there's amplified reflections and there's double-sided reflections. And there's nuances to using all these different kinds of reflections. Um, but it's helpful to a person because they hear the information twice, once when they say it, and then again from you. And this helps them to process it. It helps them to also correct you if you didn't understand them. And I think that the nicest thing about reflections is it takes you out of that problem solver mode because you're not thinking about what do I need to do to help this person solve this problem? What you're thinking about is what is that person saying? I have to listen really well, and then I have to reflect back to them what they're saying without trying to solve anything. In fact, sometimes we call this reflective listening, right? So we listen, you have to be a good listener first, and then repeat back to them using, a variety of types of reflections, what they just said. Again, that creates this atmosphere of people feeling not judged and feeling free to consider the pros and the cons. Then the last strategy is summarizing. So you've had a conversation with people, you've asked them open questions, you've affirmed them, you've built their confidence, you've made them feel heard, you've made them feel accepted. And then we want to summarize all that with them, right? All the reflections that you did, all the information that they shared. I kind of notice, and I'm doing that now. I'm just summarizing what I just talked to you about. And at the end of that summarization, you go, okay, did I get it? Did I get it right? Right? Did I miss anything? And then they'll fill in the blanks if you did, or correct you if you haven't got it quite right. And then you say, where do you want to go from here? What's the next small step that you could take? You walk out of my office, or you get off the phone, or you get out of this Zoom session, whatever it is you're doing. What's a step you can take right now, a small step in the direction of your goal, right? That you want to make, that you want to change. And that sets the stage, right? That sets the stage for them to move forward, deciding that path forward and the path that works best for them. And then we have the processes, right? So we have the spirit, and then we have the skills, then we have the processes. And kind of quickly with this one, here's what Miller and Rolnick say about the processes. And the first is if you don't engage with a client, you're not likely to get much further. And engaging to me means that client is actually deciding whether or not you can help them, whether or not you can work with them, whether or not you're a safe person to have a relationship with. They're sort of almost interviewing you in their head in a sense, is this relationship going to work out? Is it going to be to my benefit, or is that person just going to try to force me to do something I don't want to do? That's the opposite of engagement. Engagement is forming that bond. It's forming that therapeutic relationship with people. It's having unconditional positive regard for people. So that has to be first, right? If you don't do that, none of the other stuff is going to work. Evoking, what they say about evoking is it's only possible, right, to have those conversations if you have a clear focus in mind. So you see how those two fit together. The focus has to be clear, right? When we do treatment planning, we focus on what are some overarching goals? How do you want your life to be different in a broad sense, right? So that's the direction we're heading in, and then our conversations are going to be about that. And deciding whether to change is usually a prerequisite for planning how to change. And going through those stages of change, remember pre-contemplation, contemplation, but what's the next one? The next one is preparation, right? The change hasn't even taken place yet. You have to put a plan in place for how that's going to happen. So that's part of the MI process. So each process builds on each other. But it's sort of like a staircase. Sometimes they use the metaphor of the staircase to talk about these processes. You have to go up and down sometimes, right? You might slip back a little bit, you might go forward, but they're repetitive and they're recursive. So we put all that together, all those three things together, and that's our motivational interviewing process. So just to kind of wrap this up, MI has a lot of strengths. It has many strengths, and I wanted to share a couple of them with you. It's great because it respects a client's need for autonomy, right? They need to make decisions for themselves, find the best way forward for themselves. It helps to build that internal motivation for change rather than imposing change from the outside. It creates that non-judgmental space where people feel heard, and that fosters self-awareness, right? And better decision making and responsibility for positive behavioral shifts in areas like tobacco use or areas like stress or areas like anxiety, right? MI is a very versatile method to use for a lot of different things that people need to change in their life. And it empowers people and empowers clients to find their own reasons for change. And when it's relevant to them, when the change comes from that internal motivation, that intrinsic motivation, then outcomes become more sustainable because they're doing it for themselves, not just something that you're trying to do to them. So, all that being said, I didn't know if anything popped up in the Q&A box, but I am going to turn it over to Bonnie, and she's going to talk about goal setting.
Okay, wonderful, Ed. Thank you so much. That was great. Great overview of MI. So for the second half of today's webinar, I'll be using our time together to talk about goal setting and some ideas of how we can help people set a series of small, achievable goals. So a lot of people come to us and they tell us that they just feel completely overwhelmed by the thought of trying to quit using tobacco or nicotine, right? It feels like this daunting, insurmountable feat. And I imagine that might feel similar to standing at the bottom of a mountain, like the one in the photo on the left. So they want to climb it, but it's really steep and they aren't even sure where to begin. Right? There's not a trailhead, there's no clear path forward. So personally, I'd rather climb the mountain in the photo on the right. There are steps and a handrail to help along the journey. And although these tools don't really take away from the steepness of the mountain, right? It's the same mountain, it's still really high up. But these tools do offer some structure, support, and a clearer path of which way to go. So we like to use that mountain analogy when we introduce the idea of small steps to big change. Instead of setting the goal of, I will quit smoking, we can help the people that we're working with to set a series of small, achievable goals in the right direction. So as you're having these conversations with people, help them to consider the following. What is one small change they can focus on for the upcoming week? And in addition to yourself, do they have other supportive people in their life who they can lean on for help? What are some coping strategies that they feel comfortable using to help push through cravings when they pop up? And is there a mantra that resonates with them, or maybe some words of affirmation that they can say to themselves when things get really hard? Throughout their entire quit journey, do your best to touch base with them as often as you can. And be sure to show up as your true, authentic, genuine self, right? No judgment here. And each time you check in with them, do your best to touch on each of these points. So talk about their journey thus far, what they've experienced, what they've learned, and take some time to celebrate their wins, right? No matter how small they seem. So if somebody shares with you that they were able to delay a craving by 20 minutes, right, that's a win. So spend some time celebrating that with them. And be sure to share some affirmations and strengths that you are noticing with them, right? Like Edward just talked about, and help them to adjust their plan if needed and add some additional coping strategies. And then help them set another mini goal for the upcoming week. Be sure to keep in mind that there isn't a rigid timeline or specific steps that must be followed, right? Each person is their own individual human, and the journey will be a bit different for everybody. So what will work for me wouldn't necessarily work for Ed or for Alicia or for you for that matter, right? We're all unique. And it's okay to repeat a step, adjust a step midweek, or pick a different mini goal to focus on. So when that happens, what we can do is just follow their lead and continue to offer support along the way. So remember, small steps to big change. And just a little shameless plug here, we do have a new self-paced online course that does further explain this small steps concept, and it's free to sign up. And the link to sign up is right here on the slide. And you will get a copy of these slides afterwards, so don't worry about trying to write that down. So let's think about what this small steps to big change journey might look like. So here's just an example. For week 1, let's say that the person we are working with sets a mini goal to push through just one craving per day. And they decide that they will use the nicotine lozenge to help them with this. In addition to NRT, they also decide to try out some deep breathing exercises, and they'll repeat their affirmations to help them push through cravings. So really simple. That's the goal for week 1. Just push through one craving per day. And next up, week 2 rolls around. When you check in with them, you start by asking about the previous week, right? What went well? What did they learn? And they share with you that they were able to successfully push through one craving each day. They're feeling really good about that. So take some time to celebrate that with them, right? That's a win. And for this upcoming week, they want to try to push through 2 cravings each day. So upping the ante a little bit. And they know that it will be a bit harder to do this, so they decide to add another coping strategy to their toolbox. In addition to the nicotine lozenge, their deep breathing exercises, and their affirmations, they decide they're going to add on the coping strategy of taking a short walk when they feel that temptation to smoke. And week 3 is here. You repeat that check-in process. They share with you that they've had another successful week and they're feeling really motivated to amp it up even further. So this upcoming week, their goal is to try leaving the cigarettes in their car throughout the whole workday. So they'll use their coping strategies to push through the cravings, and the hope is that they won't smoke until their drive home after work. And again, they know this will be hard, so they add another coping strategy to the plan. In addition to the others that have been working really well for them, they decide that they'll use a journal to reflect on the emotions that they're feeling when those cravings to smoke pop up. So in this scenario, we have been able to check in with them every week, and we took time to explore the process, talked about how the week went, celebrated their wins, and helped them add some coping strategies to help ease the process when they amped up those goals. And we've been here cheering them on as they've taken small, measured steps in a positive direction. After a few more weeks of progress, they come to you and they share that they have cut all the way back to just 3 or 4 cigarettes each day. And compared to the whole pack of cigarettes that they were smoking at the start of the journey, that's a significant process. So that's a win in itself. And they also share with you that they aren't thinking about smoking as often as they were a month ago. It's not something that consumes their thought process anymore. And they're feeling confident that they can quit altogether by next month. So again, this is just an example of how this could look, but remember that everybody's different and it might take a bit longer for the person that you're working with, right? That's okay. We're focusing on the process rather than the outcome. And remembering that each step, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. And we've created this 4-page worksheet that kind of captures the essence of the goal-setting principles that we're discussing today. And this is free for you to access, and we encourage you to try it out if you'd like to. So I'll go ahead and just share a quick overview of what's included on the worksheet. Page 1 starts out by congratulating them on their decision to make a healthy change. And it also introduces the mountain climbing analogy. It reinforces the importance of planning ahead, and it highlights the need for setting realistic and attainable goals. Page 2 introduces the concept of a SMART goal. And I'm sure everybody on this webinar today has heard of the SMART acronym before, but just as a refresher, the SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So the person that you're working with, when they're filling out this worksheet, they'll be prompted to create their own SMART goal. And the handout, lastly, on the second page here, it introduces the concept of steps to help them reach that goal. Page 3 includes a tracking section at the top where the person that you're working with can keep track of their daily nicotine and tobacco use. So this is their baseline. And next, they're prompted to set their first mini goal. So what is one small change they can focus on for the upcoming week? And they're also prompted to write down some coping strategies, a helpful message, or an affirmation to themselves. And this is the 4th and final page of this handout. So they'll reflect on the previous week, celebrate their wins, and then set another mini goal for the upcoming week. And there is an option to add another coping strategy or affirmation. So it's always helpful to keep adding those when they're amping up the goal. And lastly, in the little blue box at the bottom, it shares a message that they are strong, they're resilient, and capable, and they can do anything they set their minds to. And I do just want to elaborate a bit more about affirmations, and Edward did talk about these earlier as well, right? We learned that they're part of the OARS skills that we use with motivational interviewing. So remember that an affirmation is when you see somebody doing something well and you tell them about it. And it makes them feel really good when they hear it, and it boosts their self-efficacy that they can do hard things. So for example, you could share an affirmation about their determination, their self-awareness, or their courage. So you might say to them, I can tell that this is really important to you. Quitting is hard, but you keep trying and you're learning new things along the way. You could also share an affirmation based on their social and emotional skills, such as resilience, responsibility, or empathy. So you might say to them, when your friends all went outside to smoke after dinner, you chose to start washing dishes instead of joining them. You're doing a really great job of balancing your social life while still taking ownership of your own smoke-free journey. And you could also share an affirmation reflecting on their practical and lifestyle strengths. So highlighting their goal-setting ability, their problem-solving skills, their discipline, right? Sticking to it. So something along these lines, you could say to them, you went for a walk and you did some deep breathing instead of smoking when that big trigger popped up for you, right? Way to use those coping skills. So these are just a few examples. The sky's really the limit here. Just be sure to share genuine affirmations often with the people that you're working with because they're really impactful and they make a big difference. And this is another handout that we recently created that you are welcome to use. And it's a great tool to use with everybody that you're working with. It's not just for teens. It starts out by asking them to share their why, right? What are their reasons for wanting to make this healthy change? And the next section explores what their triggers are, right? Is it stress, boredom, peer pressure, something else? And then it shares some ideas for coping strategies to help them push through cravings and triggers. And there's a spot to identify their support people and how they want them to show support. It includes a reminder that slips happen, but it doesn't mean that they failed. So if they do slip, they're prompted to ask themselves why it happened, taking time to reflect on the situation that led up to the tobacco or nicotine use. And it includes a reminder to be kind and gentle with themselves, adjust their quit plan, and then try again. Next, they're prompted to write some words of encouragement to themselves. So they could choose to write an affirmation, a positive mantra, really just anything to repeat to themselves throughout their quit journey. And finally, there's a section to plan ahead and identify some milestones to celebrate. So what's something they can look forward to when they go 24 hours without nicotine, or 3 days, 1 week, a whole month without nicotine? Having these all outlined beforehand will give them something fun to look forward to and push for. So just as a reminder, this is available for you to access in the CTI material database, which is something we'll highlight more towards the end of the training today. So as we've talked about, the mini goals in a quit plan don't have to be the same for every person. So one person might decide to cut back by 1 cigarette per week, while somebody else might choose to get some experience with their coping strategies even before they start cutting back on nicotine. This slide has some additional ideas for mini goals that they might think about exploring. So they could decide that their goal for the upcoming week is just simply to connect with additional support, such as the My Life, My Quit program, right, if they're ages 13 to 17, or the Maine Quit link if they're age 18 plus, or maybe they'll just get some additional support through the X program website. Or perhaps they decide that they'll try using NRT on their quit journey to help lessen the intensity of cravings. So shameless plug here with our Maine Quit link team, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. Anybody who calls this and gets registered and is eligible to receive free nicotine patch, gum, and lozenge. So if somebody shares with you that they want to use NRT, the Maine Quit link is a great resource to connect them with. And lastly on this slide, another idea is to switch to a lower strength of their chosen nicotine product that they're currently using. So for example, if they're using 9 milligram Zyn pouches, they might decide to slowly transition to using 6 milligram or 6 milligram or 3 milligram pouches, excuse me. Another idea is to practice doing a mini quit. These are a great way to help boost self-efficacy and confidence that they can push through uncomfortable cravings and nicotine withdrawal symptoms. And lastly, you can introduce the idea of riding the wave. And this is also called urge surfing. Help them to learn to acknowledge their cravings when they arise and figure out what works best as a distraction. When a craving hits, do something else to distract their mind. And within 15 minutes, the wave of craving won't be quite as intense. And we do have a short video to share today, and it's a great way to visualize the technique that we call urge surfing, right? How to push through the cravings by riding the wave and making it to smoother seas on the other side. Let's go ahead and take a look.
When cravings come along, we often try to grit our teeth and tough it out. Just like waves, urges start out small, build up to their highest point, then break and flow away. If they are not strengthened by substance use, each wave that comes will become weaker and weaker. Try taking control of the urge by surfing it. Yep, you heard me. The trigger to the urge can be people, events, anything associated with the substance. Take time to build awareness and name your triggers, along with sensations in your body. Refocusing energy and thoughts into another activity, even just for 15 minutes, can be enough for the wave to crest and fall. Good luck.
And with that, as we get near the end of the presentation today, I'll just take a few moments to highlight our free CTI material database. And this is a resource that is accessible to everybody. And when you visit this website, you'll find youth and adult provider toolkits, infographics, fact sheets, patient rack cards, some posters to hang in your office, magnets, and even some cool stickers. And both of the handouts that I shared today are available in here as well. So if you enjoyed our training today and you want to learn more about tobacco and nicotine treatment, we do encourage you to sign up for another training with us at ctimaine.org/education. We do update this calendar frequently, so be sure to check it out and see what we have coming up. Which brings us to the end of our official slides for the day. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you spending your lunch break with us. And it looks like we have about 7 or 8 minutes left. So Alicia, I'll pass things back over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Edward and Bonnie. Appreciate your time, your engagement. The presentation was great. We have some feedback in the Q&A. No real questions just yet, but please feel free to add your questions into the Q&A box. We're happy to address those as we have time. I just wanted to mention that today's session, if you missed that at the beginning, was recorded and will be posted to our website. And also as a reminder to claim CME credit, you must have a Cloud CME profile. Full instructions will be included in the post-webinar email that you'll receive later today. And again, for those seeking CHES credit, your attendance will be submitted to NCHEC on your behalf. So after today, you'll receive a follow-up email that contains the slide decks, the handouts that Bonnie referenced, a link to our material database as well, and any other additional resources that may come from questions that come back to us in our tobacco training email. And I always like to remind, once the webinar ends, an evaluation will automatically appear on the screen. We do greatly appreciate your feedback and hope that you'll take a few minutes to complete it. We do utilize the feedback to build additional trainings, make some adjustments in our content, etc. But if you have any questions, additional questions, you can feel free to contact us. And thank you for joining us today. I do want to mention, let's see, not seeing any just yet in the chat. But I did want to mention that we did have someone that brought an observation and a thank you that was using the student handouts with Catch and in-depth high school students this morning, and that the images, the embedded steps, the mountain really resonated with both of the students. So wanted to share that. They really saw that the built-in steps help to support them as they're, walking that path. So wanted to share that. Was great news. That's really encouraging you, MPN folks, to utilize the resources. They also mentioned during one-on-one classes as well that it was really helpful. And then the stars within that document to, marking their progress along the way. So, um, let's see. Any other? Oh, and then the summer one, which you'll get to see. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I know you can see it. The summer one as well. There's a vape-free, um, teen vape-free checklist for summer that was also really helpful. And that's just, less the unstructured free time that's coming ahead for these students. Um, so I wanted to share that as well. That is in the material database, so you'll get to see that as soon as you receive it. Let's see here. We have one other question. Okay, I do have another question. So Edward Bonnie, um, so I have a patient that always shows up for appointments, understands how important it is to quit, agrees to small steps, but will only do them for a short time or not at all. She did show us, excuse me, she did slowly share about past trauma. We worked together for 6 months, and what gives? Any
I,
thoughts
I,
around that,
I
Ed,
can, I can,
Bonnie?
I can jump in.
Yeah, take it away. I'll hop in
Well,
after.
here's my thought about a lot of the stuff. It takes as long as it takes, and everybody is different. And we just had a tobacco symposium last week. I think it kind of seems, I'm not sure, it's last week. And the presenter was Dr. Jill Williams, who's one of the top tobacco experts in the country, and she was talking about a case that she had that took over 2 years for the person to eventually become tobacco and nicotine free. And that was an indication of people have to go at their own pace, right? We can't make it happen before they want it to. And I always say when people go, well, doesn't seem we're making any progress, is don't give up, stay with them, be their guide, be their collaborator, be their companion, be compassionate. And as long as you have an opportunity to work with them, take the opportunity to work with them because every intervention that you do is leading them eventually towards the outcome. And even if you never see it, you can be pretty confident that you were a big part of it when it does happen. So, don't be discouraged about something like that. Be happy that the person is engaged with you. I would consider that a win that they're there because it tells me they want that outcome to happen, and eventually it will. So,
And
Bonnie, I know you wanted to chime in.
yeah, I'll chime in. You mentioned a lot of what I was thinking too, and just to kind of piggyback on that, we've found that on average it takes people about 30 quit attempts before they're tobacco nicotine free long term. So sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but it's such a journey, right? So focus on the process, not the outcome, and just keep in mind that every time they try, they're learning something. They're learning what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and that's really valuable. So keep up that persistence and rest assured that you're doing a great job and you're making a difference, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, you're planting a seed for them and it will grow eventually.
Thank you, Edward and Bonnie. There was just a couple of additional comments around that. I wondered if another provider would do better and then not hearing any effort. Any
I don't know. It's
other?
hard to
Yeah.
say about
Hmm.
another provider. I don't know. Um, but it almost seems to me that I don't know who sent that question in, but you seem to be a very compassionate person and embrace the spirit of motivational interviewing. And it's almost like I would not have sent him to someone that didn't have that, and was trying to force them into something they didn't want to, or turn them off to the process. And that happens a lot. So, um, just stay in there, stay in there with that person.
Yes, thank you for that, Edward. Okay, well, we have reached 1 o'clock, but Bonnie included our tobacco training email, tobacco, TRNG at mainehealth.org. So please feel free to utilize that if you have any follow-up questions, and you'll get an email a little bit later today. But thank you again for joining, and Bonnie, Edward, thank you both.
Thank you. And don't forget your
Thank you.
homework. You're giving an affirmation
Oh,
to
that's
somebody
right.
today.
Yes.
And have fun with it.
Take
Take
care,
care.
everybody.
Bye. Enjoy the day.
Bye-bye.